Say hi, Austin.
Hi, Austin.
All right, so I say see you later.
See you later. Bye.
All right. Okay. We are on Ruth chapter 2. And I debated about this. This devotional is able to be a little bit shorter. We're just going to cover the first 7 verses. I had thought about doing through verse 16, and then that was a little bit too long and too much. So we will do 1 through 7 this week, and then we will do 8 through 16 next week. In chapter 1 of Ruth, we saw the importance of relationships and how being faithful in those relationships turns out. And we learned how we should be in a relationship. In chapter 2 of Ruth, we're going to learn that God uses the obedience of his people to comfort the brokenhearted and redeem their suffering. So let's go on, and like always, I am going to read the first 7 verses. Now Naomi had a relative of her husband's, a worthy man of the clan of Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, "Let me go to the field and glean among the ears of grain after him in whose sight I shall find favor." And she said to her, "Go, my daughter." So she set out and went and gleaned in the field after the reapers. And she happened to come to the part of the field belonging to Boaz, who was of the clan of Elimelech. And behold, Boaz came from Bethlehem. And he said to the reapers, "The Lord be with you." And they answered, "The Lord bless you." Then Boaz said to his young men who was in charge of the reapers, "Whose young woman is this?" And the servant who was in charge of the reapers answered, "She is the young Moabite woman who came back with Naomi from the country of Moab. She said, 'Please let me glean and gather among the sheaves of the reapers.' So she came, and she continued from early morning till now, except for a short rest." So we see now that we talked about last week that we got there at the harvest time. We left in a famine. We come back at harvest time. And we also said last week that they had nothing. So we have no food. We have no clothes. I'm not really sure where they're living right now, but they have a roof over their heads somehow. But we need food, so now's the time to go find it. So we see in verse 1 a man named Boaz, and we see that he was worthy. It also tells us he was a relative of Elimelech. And if we recall from chapter 1, it tells us that Elimelech was a well-respected man as well. So this must run on Elimelech's side of the family. And it makes me think that family is valued, especially in this family, in Elimelech's family. We talked before how Naomi said she was lost when her husband and sons died and her whole world was taken away, and how her world was her family. Boaz is financially blessed as well. He has his own field, his own servants. People knew of this family, and they were known as good people. And I think that is a good reputation. That's something to be known for. Do we have that same reputation, or do we have the opposite? What are we known for? And I'm not saying you need to be known for being wealthy. And we'll get into this in the later verses. He's also known for how he treats people. And I think that shows up. That shows out in, I think, verses 6 or 7. We'll get to that in a minute. But I think this is a family value. Elimelech was well respected. Boaz is on the same side as Elimelech's family. And he is well respected. They're both wealthy. They're both worthy men. And I think that says something about them and how they handle themselves. Just because you're worthy and you're wealthy, or just because you're wealthy, doesn't mean you're a good person. There's a lot of wealthy people in this world that are the meanest people you could ever lay your eyes on. So we're going to see how this plays out with Boaz. In verse 2, we see where Ruth asks Naomi if she can go out and find some food. And of course, Naomi says yes. Now here, I don't know if Naomi is not able to go gather the food because of her age, because of her health. She don't want to. I don't know. But Ruth asks, "Can I go out and get some food?" And it's very strange. In my house, which we're in so different forms this day and age, but if Matt wants something to eat and it's something in the house, he's going to go get it. He's not going to ask, "Hey, Paula, I want a hamburger. Can I go get one?" I do the same thing. If I want a pizza, I'm not going to ask Matt. Now I may ask, "Hey, do you want pizza for dinner?" But if it's something that I want and I don't have or I need, I'm going to go get it, especially if it's food. Now, my kids are different because they're not at the age where they can go get food for themselves. But it's odd to me that Ruth has to ask. I would have just went out and got it. We need food. Hey, I'm going to go out and get food. I'm going to go out and glean the fields. But she asked. And again, that's that aspect of respect. So remember, we saw in chapter 1, verses 12, Naomi said she was too old to get a husband. So she may have not been able to go out. She may not have the strength. She may not have the stamina. It's hot. She may not have been able to carry the basket or whatever I imagine them carrying a basket. I don't know what they carried. But being able to carry the wheat. And what about, we talked about her being ashamed. She may have been too ashamed to go out and be seen by the local people. We saw last week that everyone was talking about her when she entered the town. Now that she's safe inside, she may not want to go out. We've all been there. When you're thoroughly embarrassed or when you've had a bad day and you come home from work and you just kind of slam that door shut and whew, I'm away from the world. I don't have to talk to anybody. I don't have to see anybody. I just want to stay in here. Or we've all had those days or those times or those trials in our life where I wish I could just go dig a hole and stay in there and never come out and never see anybody. And this may be what Naomi's doing. I'm not sure, but either way, she was not able or did not want to go out and gather food. But Ruth knows the need. And so she was, once again, is going to step up to the plate and go provide for them. In the ancient world, it is typically the man who works and would bring home wages that would support the family. Because Ruth and Naomi don't have a male in their house, Ruth decides that she's going to be the one to help provide food for them by going out into the fields. Again, she sees a need, she's going to get it done. And we know people like that today. They see a need and they're just going to go take care of it. And not just something that has to be done. And I think that's the spot that Ruth is in. In verse 3, we see that Ruth happens to go into Boaz's field. Now, since Ruth and Naomi were considered to be poor, they could only get the wheat that was on the very edges of the fields. The people had to, I'm going to call them farmers, but the people who grew crops, I imagine a square, because my brother grew tobacco on a tobacco farm. So every time I read this story, I know she wasn't cutting tobacco, but I visualize our square or rectangle field, and I visualize us planting 1,000,000 rows of this seed, or of this plant. And so I think of this story, I think of this big square field, and in their times, they had to leave so many inches, feet, an area as like an outline around this field. They had to leave the wheat there for the poor. That's how the poor survived. That's where they got their food. It was not the best of the crop, but when you have nothing, it was something. And I guarantee you, Ruth and Naomi at this point, they're not picky. You're hungry. You have no food. You don't know where your next meal is going to come from. You're going to eat whatever you can. So the poor people were very happy to have this chance to get just a little bit of the crop of these other people. And in verse 3, it also said that Ruth happened upon Boaz's field. She wasn't seeking it. She wasn't on the way there and got distracted. She just happened upon it. Now, was this really by chance, or was God's hand in it? And I think we all know that God's hand was in this. Ruth didn't know whose field she was in, because we have to remember she was not from this area. The only person she knew is Naomi, and Naomi didn't go with her. She's out on her own. So I think Ruth went out to find food, and Boaz's field is a place where he had plenty left on the edges for the poor. And it may have been less crowded. It may have been the first one she come to. I don't know. All we're told is that she happens upon this field. So again, we see God's hand all over this, that this is the field that he picked for her. In verse 4, we see that Boaz was out walking the fields. Again, notice the coincidence that Boaz came out the day that Ruth was working. In verse 5, he asked the young man in charge of his field, who was this woman in the field? And we see in verses 6 and 7 the conversation that took place. And it goes like this. Ruth asked to glean. The servant said yes. And Ruth worked gathering food. Now, the Bible tells us from early morning until now. That makes me think she's been out there for a while. That makes me think maybe early afternoon, mid-afternoon. It's not at the end of the day. So it makes me think it may be the afternoon. And but she has been out there for a while, because the servant also said, and he also noticed that she didn't take but one short break. So there again, what does this tell us about Ruth? It tells us she's a hard worker. And it also makes me think maybe she's gathering more than just for that one day. That maybe she doesn't want to make this trip every day. Maybe she's trying to gather for a week. I don't know. I don't know how long wheat lasts. I don't know anything about it. I don't know how to make anything with wheat. So this is just me completely speculating. But she wasn't just out there enough to get by one meal. She made sure she had enough. She wasn't out there just to get herself something. She made enough that she had for herself and for Naomi. And who knows? They're back in Naomi's hometown. What happens when we go back home? Well, I know it is for me, but I'm several hours away from my hometown. We are bombarded, with everybody saying, hey, come out to eat with us, or we would like to see you. And sometimes it's so hard to fit everybody into that schedule, especially if you're only there for a couple of days. And I know Naomi's situation is different. She's there permanently now, but still, maybe they have people coming over. And how would you feel if there wasn't any food in the house? So maybe that's why Ruth is taking so long. Maybe she's making sure they have extra in case somebody stops by to talk to them. But she's out there for now. She's not only thinking of herself, she's thinking of Naomi. She's not only getting for that one meal. It seems like she is getting to provide for them. And she will come back. It's not that she's trying to do this one and done and I don't have to come out anymore. I don't think it's that. But it also tells us that she is a hard worker. She wants to provide, and she's going to do what it takes to provide, and she's going to do her job to the fullest. She's not going to do it halfway. And sometimes we have to remember that. If we are given a job to do, don't do it halfway. Give it our all. Do it to the best of your potential. And sometimes that's hard. What does this tell us about Boaz? I'm sure he had several servants, yet he knew the people who were supposed to be in his field. And I think that says a lot. We know he's wealthy. We know he's worthy, but yet he knows, and I guarantee you he probably knows the names of these people, even though we aren't told in the Bible. He knew the people working in his fields, and he knew who was supposed to be there and who wasn't supposed to be there. He also kept check. He didn't just stay in the house and, he has the servant in charge of the other ones out there. And he's not just sitting there saying, okay, he's out there, he's in charge, that's what I pay him for, so I'm going to let him deal with it. No, he takes pride. He goes out, he checks. He's going to make sure there's no problems. And if there's a problem, he's going to take care of it. But he's not that demanding, evil boss. He seems to be friendly. There's a friendly relationship between him and the workers. Because if you go back up there, when they greeted each other, Boaz comes up to him and says, the Lord be with you. And what did the reaper answer? The Lord bless you. So there was no evil content, no negative. There was a mutual respect. He greets with a blessing. They greet with a blessing right back. And there's loyalty. And I think that shows Boaz's character and reflection of the loyalty of his servants. Because his overseer, Boaz is an overseer who likes to know what's going on, but not one that seems to be harsh and not demanding. He wants to be in the loop, so to speak. And he watches out for his own and he cares for those that work for him. His kind character is seen in that young man. He does not have to go ask Boaz's permission to allow Ruth to work the field. Instead, he knows that Boaz isn't going to have a problem with it. So he tells her to go on. There's that loyalty there. Boaz trusts this man to on his fields to make sure that the other workers are doing their job. And you still have to watch, I'm sure, the poor people. They may try to come in and take a little bit more than what they're supposed to, or get into the field that they're not supposed to get into. And they may cause problems too. We'll see an issue later on about getting water to drink and taking breaks. And so this guy has a big responsibility, but yet Boaz trusts him. And there's that loyalty there. This also shows his obedience to the Lord in that leaving parts of the field unharvested was a command of God to help the poor and needy have food. All of this shows us what type of man Boaz was. And all in all, we have seen so far, he's a pretty good guy. And maybe we should all try to be more like a Boaz. Be, as far as our character goes, be loyal, be trustworthy. Don't be demanding. Don't be harsh. Care about people. If you are at a job and you are higher up and you have people below you, don't treat them like they mean nothing. treat them just like you want to be treated. Now sometimes when it says a demanding boss, there are certain circumstances that a boss has to be demanding, or a boss has to get a little, I don't want to say rude, angry. You all know what I mean. They have to raise your voice a little bit. There's some situations, but overall, Boaz was not that way. And it goes back to what we started out this devotional as, is what kind of reputation do we have? Does someone look at you and say, oh, well, she's the one that flies off the handle at everything? Or she's really sweet. She's always out doing stuff for everybody. Or, oh, I can trust her. She is someone I can call any time of the day. She's there when I need her. She never makes me feel like my problems are too small or that are too big or that my problems burden her. Or we have that reputation of, I really don't want to make that phone call. I really don't want to go see that person. Do I have to see that person? We want the reputation of Boaz. We want to be well respected. And again, I think this shows that it goes down through the family as well, because I don't know how they were related. It just says they're in the same family line. But Elimelech, that family was very important. He was very respected. And it seems that Boaz is the same way. And I think the way he treats his servants, I think is also a reflection of how he treats his family. If he is this nice and this loyal and this caring to his servants, how much more loyal and caring is he going to be to his own family? And that's what I want us to take away from this today. And next week we will get into verses 8 and see a little bit more of what's going on in the field with Ruth, and see a little bit more of what's going on. But this week, just think about our reputation. Just think about what we are leaving behind, what we're showing people every day. I hope you all have a great week, and I will see you all here next week. Thank you for listening.